All right. Well, let's welcome Bobbie Scopa to the lookout. Bobbie is a veteran firefighter with over 45 years of experience working for federal agencies, state agencies, fire departments, um, and finished her career as an assistant director of fire and aviation for the Pacific Northwest and Alaska for the Forest Service. Bobbie's the executive secretary of Grassroots Wildland Firefighters. And so I've asked her to come on today to talk about the work that Grassroots is doing for federal wildland firefighters and also to talk about the government shutdown and how that affects fire programs and the Forest Service in general. So welcome to Lookout, Bobbie.
Thank you very much. And I understand that you're near the Plumas, and being an old firefighter, I have a lot of memories that I'm still recovering from on the large fires on the Plumas.
Of the Feather River Canyon breaking you off.
I have my own podcast and articles that I talk about the Feather River Canyon and trudging out of that canyon. Um, yeah.
All right, so tell me a little bit about Grassroots Wildland Firefighters and the work you guys are doing.
Well, Grassroots started maybe 6, 7 years ago, made up of either retired or former federal wildland firefighters with the express interest to advocate for federal wildland firefighters. We've been in the mix, trying to get the pay the pay raise made permanent. We were involved with the job series creation. Um, we have been working on the medical um, issues relating to wildland firefighting. So we have been involved in a lot of different things, and we've been having some success. Um, I I am amazed and thankful that we have had the success that we've had already. So as someone who's been in working either for or with the government for the last almost 50 years now, um, I am cynical about how much difference we can make. And so when I see the successes that Grassroots is having, then I'm amazed and thankful.
So tell me why it's necessary for there to be grassroots advocacy for wildland firefighters.
Well, anyone who has worked for the federal government as a wildland firefighter would know very clearly that we need advocacy. The issues that Grassroots has taken up are the same issues that many of us from within have been working on, speaking about, trying to influence for the last 20, 30 years, without seeing any change. So within the U.S. Forest Service, I can say more clearly, I have more experience there. Within the Forest Service, there has been very little advocacy within the agency for the wildland firefighters. And I had said many times over my career is that the Forest Service had abdicated its responsibility to the firefighters. Um, I'm not saying there aren't good people, and there haven't been good people working at the highest levels of the Forest Service in fire. But I can tell you that there just has been more concern about maintaining the bureaucracy than there has been about maintaining the federal workforce in wildland fire. And that includes fuels and everything else related to it. So because there has been no advocacy, there's been no progress. We went for how many years as forestry technicians when we said we needed a different job series? We went for how many years losing personnel to other fire organizations or just getting out of fire completely because of the pay. Um, we continue to lose people from mental health issues. You know how it is? Our folks are running and gunning like for 6, 7, 8 months. They're working, incredible amounts of overtime, and then they come home and we set them free and say, go and see you in a couple months. It's not good for the mental health. We have high suicide rates. We have people who get in accidents, taking risks um, on their off time. So the reason we need, to me, it's very clear why we need advocacy for the federal wildland firefighters. They're not treated, and they have never been treated like the professionals that we have, that we need and we've grown into. Because when I started in 1974, I wouldn't say we were professionals. We were a bunch of yahoos out there with shovels and Pulaskis and enjoying the work, but it wasn't like this. It wasn't like it is now. So the agencies have not shifted as the work has changed, as the workforce has changed, as the fires have changed. The agencies have not changed to go along with it, requiring some advocacy to do so.
All right. So you mentioned some of the things that you guys feel like you're making success on. Uh, those include pay raises and a new job designation. So basically, is that so? Firefighters have been classified as forestry technicians, not as firefighters.
Correct.
And so, what's the progress on that? Where's the new kind of job series?
Well, the job series is been put out. As a matter of fact, the agencies have said that all new jobs, all not new jobs, all job vacancies are going to be advertised using the new job series. And so people aren't required to move into the new job series, but the last word I received is that you're not going to be forced to move into it, but all the new vacancies will be advertised with the new one. And that, goes along with the raise and that sort of thing.
Okay. So, how much of all this work that's been done over the last couple of years on legislation is now kind of held up by the turmoil in the federal government?
Well, you know, uh, figuring out the reason why things are held up. I mean, things have always been held up. And now we just have another layer of crazy bureaucracy. So um, that's a that's a that's a complicated question. Some of the stuff we're working on right now has to do with um, getting fire organizations to either be consolidated altogether or, in the case of the Forest Service, get fire to work for fire, because one of the big problems in the Forest Service has always been that the fire director in DC has no ability to reach out and make things happen on the ground in the fire organization. And I bring that up because that is a big issue for us right now, trying to get a better organization, something that is more nimble, something that's less bureaucratic. And to tell you why I think it's moving or not moving or what's the cause, I can't tell you. We've made some progress with this issue even since the new um, administration has been in office. Um, and I say progress, I just mean people at least talking about it.
Okay.
Um,
So, I was in a training a couple of days ago, and they gave an update on kind of the consolidation of the Federal Wildland Fire Service, and they said that where it stands right now is that they're consolidating all the DOI agencies,
right,
but not the Forest Service into that.
right.
What's going on there?
Well, um,
Like, doesn't
the
that defeat
forest,
the purpose of consolidation to say like, oh, we're going to bring in like Fish and Wildlife and Park
right.
Service, and we're going to combine all these smaller departments, but we're still going to have two separate
Yeah,
agencies that administer it?
yes, exactly right. Um, you're taking the largest organization that has all the contracts for aircraft and contract crews and all the rest of that stuff and logistics and you're going to keep them separate. And so what we've done is, or what they're doing is, they're addressing, they're addressing the dust in the corner and not mopping the whole floor. So we hear that there is likely to be more conversations about that, and it's not over. But that is a big deal, and in
And
part the
so, and
reason,
because it's walking back a stated intent to like rapidly move to a single agency
Yeah,
that's under the Department of Interior.
right,
Okay.
right. That was the original thought. But you can imagine how the bureaucrats in the Washington office of the Forest Service feel about that. They, I believe in their inability to see the big picture. It's going to, I think they're worried about the Forest Service going away if they take fire out of the agency. I think there's a lot of bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. And in the field that worry that you remove fire from the agency, it's going to be easy for them to just shutter the doors on the agency. So there's a lot of angst about it. And the Forest Service was never a big forward-looking organization in terms of fire. They haven't changed anything organizationally in regards to fire in what, 100 years. Um,
Huh. I know, and I think looking at how poorly the Forest Service is pulling off anything except fire, them going away completely wouldn't be the end of the world for a lot of us. I think when I look at the condition of the national forests where I used to work and where I've grown up, like how could it be worse than the Dixie Fire and, everything that's just the the forests are wrecked. So I'm not sure that the Forest Service going away completely would be the worst outcome of any of this.
well, I think a lot of people worry that it's not just the Forest Service that could go away, but the whole forests themselves.
Well,
You know,
they're already doing that without any help from the Forest Service.
well, they're talking about disposing of lands and that sort of thing. So, um, there's a lot of interest in turning national forests over to the states to become, a bigger source of timber. Um, and along with that, then you lose the designations of wilderness or any of the other management issues that people are concerned about. Accessibility, I mean, that would be huge for accessibility. So, um, but there's a lot of reasons people don't want fire to be taken out of the Forest Service. People in their minds, they're thinking back of the days when it was like in the 70s when I started, when there was a fire, you might have had a local crew, but everybody gathered up and everybody went out and fought the fire. And it was the rec crew, it was the timber crew, it was everybody else. And that's what people kind of like this old romantic idea about how we managed fires on the forest. Well, those days are gone. I mean, like I said, the fires are different, the environment is different, climate's different, the fuels are different. We started seeing these changes, in the 80s, and it's just gotten worse and worse and worse, and yet we still want to manage the way we did, you know, in the 1960s.
So you were saying earlier that the National Fire Director at the Forest Service has no ability to affect anything on the ground. What did you mean by that?
Well, so if you think about a district FMO or a division chief, they work for a district ranger, and that district ranger works for a forest soup, and the forest soup works for a deputy or a regional forester, and that regional forester works for the chief. Well, where is the fire director in that line authority? It isn't in there. So, and I spent 8 months working in DC as the deputy fire director, and I witnessed it when I was still in the field. But it's very clear that if the district, if the fire director for the Forest Service wants a certain change to take place out in the field, he or she sends communications out to the regional fire director, and the regional fire director sends direction out to the force fire chiefs, and then they send it out to the FMOs. Well, there's no authority there. The only reason things get done is because people choose to follow who that came from. But if they don't like that direction, all they have to do is tell their boss, no, I don't think this is right. Their boss being the line officer, and they don't have to follow it. I have seen it from the district as a district FMO. I saw things come down that I was told not to follow because my district ranger didn't want to do it. I was at the regional office and we would send direction out that didn't get followed because they didn't have to, because the force soup didn't like it. It's a complete disconnect. There's got to be control and oversight from the fire director. Otherwise, what's the point of the fire director?
Hmm. So coming to where we're at right now with the shutdown, I mean, you've been through shutdowns, many shutdowns in your career. You pay people not to come to work, right? So
In essence.
you're not saving money by shutting the government down. You're paying people to not work. So it's the opposite. Um, and right now we can't do prescribed burning in Northern California in this narrow window, this narrow, beautiful fall window we have for burning. So you were mentioning that that's affecting all the hiring too. So what's going on right now with the shutdown? What are some of the other impacts that the shutdown's having on wildland firefighting?
Well, first off, let's make it clear that in absolute typical Forest Service fashion, what's happening in Northern Cal may or may not be happening in the Intermountain West, or it might not be happening in Northwest. There's no standard. Everybody's rolling their own because that's the way the Forest Service does business. So, but what's going on right now, in addition to everything else, is hiring. Hiring is starting in the Southwest. Each region has their time period where the hiring is going on. Well, the Southwest hiring is beginning here pretty soon. Well, where are our folks in the field to go through the process? It's a lot of work. Where are they? Um, is that all going to happen? I doubt it because probably um, Albuquerque probably is laid off as well for most of the people. And if they aren't, the folks on the forest who are involved with making selections and reviewing applications and all that, they're not there. So what's going to happen is say this shutdown lasts for a week or two. Well, that just delayed by a couple weeks all of the hiring because they got a set schedule. Region 3 hiring is between this dates and this dates, and then Region 4 between those dates and those dates. So the point is that's going to get everybody jammed up. So not only are we going to end up paying people who didn't work, they were sent home, we also are going to have this giant mess when we're trying to hire. Um, so you've got the fuels work that's not getting done, that needs to get done. This is the great time of year to be burning piles and everything else. But we can't because we're not at work. Some places I understand they are going to be doing some burning. So again, it's just a hodgepodge from one region and one forest to the next. But imagine the hiring. If you've been involved in hiring, you know what a mess it can be, and you can throw a wrench into the works really easy just by postponing the dates of when it starts, and it jams everybody up. Um, so it's going to be just more of a mess. We're just creating more inefficiency and creating more chaos into the system by the shutdown.
So this year, there were the kind of reductions in force early in the year, and there was speculation that that would cause a lot of problems during the fire season. What have you heard about the ability of teams to fill positions, the ability to staff fires? Have there been negative consequences this year on federal fires because of the reductions in force?
Well, I'm not on a team anymore, and so I can't tell you what I've witnessed. But what I've been told is that um, if you tried to take, if you took all the teams in the country and listed their rosters, that we were down enough people that we would be down about 5 teams. And so the teams that were going out, but they were having to chase around looking for positions. It was like imagine just having a nothing but short teams, and then when you go out long, you got to fill all the positions. Well, that's what it was like because we were down so many positions. So section leaders, section chiefs like ops and logistics and finance and plans, they had to go out searching to fill positions. I don't have any knowledge of because I'm not intimate with the GACs anymore. So I suspect there might have been some calls, teams going out and saying, getting a call, the IC getting a call and say, hey, you guys are going to be up and you may be going out to wherever. And I'm sure that IC was calling their section chiefs saying, hey, you guys got to make sure you're rostering, you got everybody. And they're scrambling trying to fill positions. The thing is, we didn't have as many large fire team assignments this year. We had more small fires, I think nationally, or at least in the Northwest. I think there was more IA fires than normal, but we didn't have as many team fires. So we kind of dodged a bullet, is the best I can believe.
All right. So tell me about some other things you've got going on with Grassroots Wildland Firefighters. Why did you, why do you guys support consolidating all the federal fire agencies? Where do you think, how's that going to benefit firefighters? And how come it's taken so long to build so much support for this? I know that this idea has been around for my whole lifetime, and there's always been kind of a lot of kind of petty squabbles about, oh, if we consolidate, then, the Almanor is going to lose their engine and mineral because the Park Service will cover it. Um,
Right.
how did we come to a place where there's been this shift and a recognition from the grassroots that it's necessary to consolidate the federal fire agencies?
Well, let me go back, 20 years or more. Um, Many folks in the Forest Service believed that at minimum fire ought to be stovepiped. The fire organization ought to be stovepiped, meaning that the fire director in DC supervised those regional fire directors who supervised the regional fire chiefs who supervised those district division chiefs or FMOs. So that thought process has always been there. Um, then over time, sitting in my shoes and my jobs, the inefficiency of having five different agencies doing the same thing it was frustrating as can be. Imagine hiring a battalion chief for a unit, and they arrive, and the Forest Service is reviewing everything. They got their training records, and all of a sudden, the training officer on that unit says, "Wait a second, so and so is not qualified to be battalion chief." What do you mean? He came from the BLM as a battalion chief. Well, he doesn't meet Forest Service qualifications. So now agencies had different requirements to be in jobs, and as much movement as going back and forth that goes on, um, it's not seamless. Now, no one is saying it isn't seamless on the ground in terms of a fire engine. A yellow fire engine shows up with a green hotshot crew with a white, resource from the Park Service. Those folks work together. But in my career, I worked in an area that had BLM and Forest Service and Cal Fire responding to the same locations. And I would say, why does the Forest Service and the BLM have to respond and send two duty officers to the same incident? We're all fed. Well, that went over like a lead balloon. My God, you don't want to be, you don't want to redeem your responsibilities, blah, blah, blah. So now you got three chiefs on the same fire where two of them working for the feds. So once you get one layer up, the inefficiencies are crazy. We talk about NIFC, and how that's wherever all the synergy goes on and everything, everybody's working together. It isn't that way at all. We have five different agencies doing five different jobs, and they may be sitting in the same building, and their offices are down the hall from each other. We're operating totally separately. Um, Now, there is some coordination, obviously. I'm not suggesting there isn't coordination, but the inefficiency in the system is crazy. And if we really care about being responsible for the tax dollars we get, why wouldn't we look for ways to be more efficient? Now, yes, the example you brought up is if this green engine is sitting there and there's a Park Service engine right nearby, gosh, I could lose my job. Either the white engine or the green engine ought to go away. Well, maybe the green engine or the white engine ought to go away, and we create something a little different. Um, there's an old saying, especially in the structural fire world, is American Fire Service, 200 years of tradition unimpeded by progress. And we're the same way in the wildland world. I know a young man who's about a year or so ago got a chief one job on a unit that I'm familiar with. And I told him, hey, this could happen. What do you think if this consolidates? And and he's worked for different agencies. He's worked for BIA and the Forest Service. And his answer was, I'll quit before I transfer into some big national wildland fire service. I want to wear green. That's my identity. That's where I feel the safest. And by God, I'm proud. And now I don't I don't think less of him because he feels that way. It's human nature. Change is hard. And can you imagine if, say, which I don't think is going to happen here in the next year, but say in the next year they consolidated all five federal wildland agencies, it is going to be a shit show for a few years. There is no way you can do this without it being a mess.
Hmm.
There's going to be people still doing, they're going to be range wars. They're going to be firing shots across the fence back and forth because you used to be green and you used to be yellow. It's
Yeah.
going to be a mess.
I used to work for Joe Stutler when he was briefly a contract hired gun in Northern California, and we had a refresher, and he said, if you're ever on a hyphenated national forest, there's dysfunction in the DNA of that fire organization because at some point in the not so far history, like they consolidated two national forests, and half the people are still pissed that their favorite
Yeah.
chief went away. And I
Yeah.
thought that was a kind of a really interesting kind of meta level watch out
Yeah.
situation. But when you take it to the national level, I see what you're talking about.
I was Chief One on the Okanagan Wenatchee and Okanagan Wenatchee. Those two units were still fighting back and forth. And it had been, I don't know, it had been probably 15 years since they had consolidated, probably 10 at least. Um, yeah, yeah,
Hmm. Well, yeah, when they first rolled out this idea, back in March or April, they said it's going to happen in the next 6 months. It's like, yeah, right.
yeah, yeah,
Well, as a contractor, I spent my whole year, I've spent my whole career basically as a contractor and dealing with the contracting systems and the lack of contract administrators. And, like there's obviously huge room for improvement. And so
yeah.
I'm glad that your group is embracing this change. You know,
Well, think about being one of the state agencies dealing with multiple federal agencies. Wouldn't it be easier if you were a state just to have one place to go to? And on this side of your state forest, you got to deal with the policies of the Forest Service, and on that side of the state forest, you got to deal with the BLM, and God, on that side, you got to deal with the Park Service. Holy shit. Um, yeah, I would think it would be a lot easier. Now, to give you some perspective, when I was a city firefighter, um, I went through the same process with the community of fire departments in a small geographic area,
right?
three or four, and we used to run by each other's stations. I mean, you'd get a call, you were driving by the city station, and sometimes the city was driving by the county station.
Yeah.
Totally ridiculous. Now, we're not as bad as that, but we still don't. I mean, we're still not doing great. But those fire departments, over time, they're seeing the light. Why do we need four fire chiefs in this community? We can get by with one. We can have a
Right.
little bit better supervision with battalion chiefs or duty chiefs, that sort of thing. So it's not just the wildland world, but we're definitely hanging on, holding on tight with our fingernails, dragging, trying not to change. And it's
Well,
just
and
the way.
what do you think is going to happen with fuels management, prescribed fire? If you have a federal agency and you take it away from the land management agencies, how is that somewhere that your organization is trying to put some weight into making sure that we continue to have ecologically based fire management
Yeah.
and fuels management?
That's a tough piece of the puzzle because there is no fire management if you're not doing fuels management, if you're not doing thinning and piling and prescribed burning and all the rest of that. Um, so part of the fallacy in the system is that in the past we depended on all of our suppression folks to also double as doing fuels. Um, we need to do as much fuels as we can using our operational response people. But over the last, I don't know, 10, 15 years, we're having less and less opportunities for our response personnel to be available to do the fuels work because they're too busy. They're working, if they're working 1,000 to 1,500 hours of overtime, there is no, there's no time. You're going to get a hotshot crew that comes off of a hard season, and then you're going to tell them, oh, yeah, now you're going to go and help with these prescribed burns. You don't get full overtime. You don't get hazard pay. We just ran you ragged across the whole entire country. Now go spend, a couple of weeks camping out waiting for a burn window.
Right.
It's not working. We may need some dedicated fuels people that are just doing fuels work, because that's got to be a part of it. And whether it's done by the uh, Wildland Fire Service or whether it's done by the agency, however that gets worked out, I can't say, but there's a workload there that we're not getting to.
Is there a place in grassroots for contractors, or is it federal employees?
We advocate for the feds, so we haven't taken on any advocacy for the contractors, um, and state and local at all. Um, there is a lot of work to do in that regard. And so maybe some point in the future, if we can get things working and going in the right direction for the feds, maybe we can look at other groups. But right now we're feds.
All right. Well, we got 2 minutes left on our free Zoom session. Uh, I can either upgrade to pro or we can wrap it up.
Oh, we're good. I mean, I'm good if you're good.
All right. Anything else you want to say while you've got the Lookout massive platform at your disposal?
Hey, you can go get some leadership lessons from BobbieOnFire.com at my podcast.
All right. Tell me a little bit, like how long you been doing that?
Well, I've got about 108 stories posted, podcast posted, over 2 million downloads of the stories. They mostly are leadership based. I've also got even more focused leadership lessons in my monthly column in Wildland Firefighter magazine.
All right. We'll have to check that out. Do you have any stories, short story about Lonnie Williams?
I do, but not anything I want to say on a public podcast.
All right. Yeah, he was my boss for several years, about,
Nice.
mid 2000s. All right.
I
Well,
was on a team with him.
is that Joe Stutler's team?
That was,
Team of
yeah, it was
three?
Stutler's team. Yeah.
I was just over in the town of Walker last week and saw the memorial there for the C-130. That was the first time I worked with that team. Was in Colville when the
Right.
wings came off the C-130.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we were in on the Colville a couple times, I recall now.
Cool. Yeah, east side of the Sierra. All
Yeah.
right. Well, I'm gonna get you back on the line here offline to talk about Lonnie Williams. But in the meantime, thanks for coming on the program, Bobbie
Alrighty.
Scopa.
Thank you.
All right, catch you soon.
Bye bye.